Seems like never a dull moment in the NFL nowadays, as it's trade after crazy signing, after crazy bit of news. The NFL offseason has been extremely wild, and things are not even close to done. Today, the Saints would make a trade with the Eagles, to where the Saints would get 2 first-round picks this year in total. The Eagles would get a first-round pick next year and a second-round pick 2 years from now. So they swapped firsts, and the Saints now jump the Chargers to the number 16 spot, and then they're at 19 as well, which is where the Eagles were previously. So a lot has changed in that regard, and now 8 teams have more than 1 first-round pick this year, which is so absurd to say. And of course, by that same logic, many teams without even 1 first-round pick. But we're going to do this mock draft, and we'll see how things go. There's so many different ways the draft can go, and usually I had the Lions taking Malik Willis at 2. Maybe not usually, but I've done that before. Not doing that today, and we're going to mix things up. And it's kind of focused around the drop of certain players. If you guys saw my Kyle Hamilton video, I know people are going to overreact and think that I think he's terrible. But the reality is that he has been dropping, and I think his flaws are really starting to come to the surface a bit more. Still a good player, but I don't really think in the conversation to go inside that top 3 like maybe we have thought about before. And I think there's a good chance from the people that I've talked to that he's going to be available past 10, maybe into that second half of the first round, which is beyond pick 16, but I don't know that he makes it quite that far. So let's go ahead and do this mock draft, and I'll explain these picks as we go. Number 1, I will leave as Aiden Hutchinson. I still think they could be in the market to take a tackle like Evan Neal, but I think it's more likely that they'll take Aiden Hutchinson after putting Cam Robinson back under contract, at least for the very short term. And then they still have Walker Little, who was a second-round pick last year. I don't know that they need to take a tackle here. Even if I were picking for them, I might. Aiden Hutchinson is a pick here at number 1. No trades in this one. Maybe my next video will have trades, but I have to account for just this particular scenario with the Saints for the first one. At number 2, I am going to go Trayvon Walker, and he might end up being the next video that I make because there's so many differing opinions on him all over the place. And I think Trayvon Walker is a freak athlete. He's got crazy long arms, and you're just never going to find a player of that size and speed that can also move in space the way he can. But the pass rush is a projection at this point. So you're hoping you can coach him up. But for the Lions, who aren't really going to be competitive this year, I think taking a bit of a project player that will project as a good run defender that can move out in space as well, you have a lot to work with there. Trayvon Walker can end up being great. I do think he is worth a top pick in the draft, even if he's not worth the number 1 overall pick. I think you'd like to go a little bit safer at that spot. But at number 2 for the Lions, I think it makes sense. But he could be available anywhere from number 2 to number 8 or 9. Trayvon Walker is going to be an interesting one. At number 3, I'm going to go Ike Mekwonu. And the biggest reason why, I know they don't necessarily need a tackle, but this is more so to put their offensive line back in shape to where it should be. At left tackle, you have Laramie Tunsil. I'm plugging in Ike Ekwonu probably at left guard, where he's going to be very, very, very good at that position. And is this a little bit high for a guard? Yes, but he can also be a swing tackle in a pinch if you need him to be, because he was pretty solid as a left tackle at NC State last season. But I think he can be a really, really good guard, even if most teams are going to want to stick him at tackle just because it's a more valuable position. But what does this allow you to do? Well, you spent a first-round pick on tackle not too long ago, and you've been playing him at guard, and he's just not nearly as good as guard. So you can swing him back over to right tackle, have Ekwonu play on the interior, and it also gives you the versatility if somebody gets injured that he can play tackle in a pinch and be fine out there. So I think that's a pick that makes a lot of sense. As we get to the Jets at number 4, I think could be a real wild card. I think it's probably going to be an edge. There's like maybe an outside shot. This is Garrett Wilson. And there's been so much talk about Kayvon Thibodeau dropping. We are going to at least experiment with the idea of him dropping today. And we're going to get a little bit crazy and take Garrett Wilson. Apparently, like, he could go up a lot higher than a lot of people think. And he's already in that conversation at 10 or 11. So I think there's a real chance Garrett Wilson could be the first real surprise of the draft at number 4, even though like these first couple picks are not really set in stone, but they're plausible. But Garrett Wilson is kind of like, whoa, Garrett Wilson at 4, but he's worth the pick, I think. Giants at 5. We're going to go ahead and go with Evan Neal. Now, I don't really want the Jets taking a tackle anymore. George Fant has been solid. I think he could even play left tackle for them and move Mekhi Becton back over to the right side. I don't really think you need to take a high pick on a tackle when you have other pressing needs. So that's the reason why Evan Neal has fallen to 5. And Ekwonu I thought was just more of a fit for that particular team based on my idea with where you're playing, who at guard and who at tackle. For the Panthers, every time I do this, it gets heat. But Malik Willis has the highest potential of any QB in the class. So it makes sense that he could be the first one off the board. That just makes sense. But is he? Is the question. I think we're instead going to mix it up and go with Kenny Pickett today. Seemed like the Panthers like him, and he is probably the most pro-ready quarterback in the draft right now. Desmond Ridder could end up being a first-round guy. Probably go round 2. Same thing with Corral, Howell. But Malik Willis might be that other first-round QB that some team bets on his upside. And we've seen teams do that in the past. So I do think he ends up being a first-round pick. And then for the Giants at 7, here's the thing. What would I do in this spot? I would probably take Kayvon Thibodeau. Ahmad Gardner's here, Sauce. You don't need Charles Cross. You took Evan Neal. Jermaine Johnson's here. But it seems like there's at least a possibility that Kayvon Thibodeau will fall. So I'm going to continue his fall a little bit in this draft just to experiment with that possibility. Hopefully you guys don't skip what I'm saying here and actually understand that and say, oh, you think Thibodeau is going to fall to 15? No, I don't. And I wouldn't let that happen. But I think there's a chance that he does fall, in the back end or even outside of the top 10 based on what people are saying. And you got to kind of go with those rumors sometimes to at least experiment with that possibility and see how the board might end up changing. For the Giants at number 7, I am going to go Sauce Gardner. It's a really good edge class. You don't necessarily have to take one inside the top 10. You could, and I think teams might even trade up. The Giants might move back. But with Sauce Gardner, he is the exact perfect scheme fit for the Wink Martindale defense, the Giants' new defensive coordinator. It really relies on press man corners, and that's exactly the strength of Sauce Gardner. So is he worthy of a top 7 selection? I think absolutely. And I think the Giants would get a pretty good one here at that number 7 overall pick as we get to the Falcons at 8. And Malik Willis, I think, is in play here. However, if I'm the Falcons, I don't think we're going to be that good. And I would say maybe wait for quarterback next year. So we're going to try and build up the rest of the team and maybe catch a falling star and go with Kayvon Thibodeau. Now, he could fall even further than this, but at the end of the day, he's still one of the best players in the draft. He's really, really good, and I think worthy of a top 10 pick without any real major red flags. Like, Larry Tunsil had some red flags, and he dropped to like 13. For Thibodeau, there aren't really any major red flags. They're just some question marks, right? But Thibodeau, I still think very worthy of a top 10 pick, so he's going to go here at number 8. And then for the Seahawks, I'm in between 3, and it's a really tough decision. Malik Willis to be maybe your QB of the future, Charles Cross to come in and start right away at left tackle, which is a big need, or Jermaine Johnson. They really need edge help horribly. So when you have these top 3 needs, these are actually the top 3 needs. I completely agree. And I don't think there's even a set order. It could be QB, edge, OT. It could be in any order. So this is really just best player available for the Seahawks. You want to bet on the potential of Malik Willis. You want a really solid option in Jermaine Johnson, or do you want a really solid option in Charles Cross? It's a really tough conversation at 3 extremely valuable positions. And for Seattle here, I think we might bet on the upside of Malik Willis. And I know that's a crazy pick to make because, oh man, he's so raw. He's not ready. But you have Drew Lock. Maybe you don't believe in Drew Lock long term. Malik Willis at 9, I think, is good enough value to where if he ends up developing the way that he has the potential to, this is an absolute steal at 9. However, that being said, it's a bit of a boom or bust situation where you might not ever end up seeing that value there at number 9. But Jets at 10, I'm going to go with Jermaine Johnson. Continue to build on that edge. You got a great receiver at 4, and Jermaine Johnson, I think, is really good value at this number 10 spot, and the Jets should be very happy with that. At number 11, we're going to see the second receiver off the board. It's going to be Drake London here at 11. They don't desperately need receiver, but with Curtis Samuel being injured last season, Diami Brown is a deep threat. Wasn't great as a rookie, even if I do have high hopes for him developing. Well, not high hopes. I'm a Giants fan. I don't really want him to be great, but I think he's going to end up being quite good as a deep threat. And then, of course, Scary Terry, one of the best receivers in football. They don't really have this big jump ball red zone threat like Drake London. Even though Terry McLaurin's really good with the football in the air, he's not the same type of red zone threat that Drake London is, where you just get pure size and a big mismatch. So Drake London is the pick here at 11. If you're going to take a receiver, I do think it's Drake London. As much as I love Jameson Williams and even Chris Olave down the board, Jahan Dotson, I don't think the Commanders, Washington Commanders, would take a deep threat style receiver based on who's already there. But if Drake London makes it to 11, I think that's certainly in play. Vikings at 12. Charles Cross still on the board. Kyle Hamilton, Derek Stingley still on the board. We're going to go ahead and take Derek Stingley Jr. here at this spot. He's got great upside, and I think there's going to be a team that really does love him based on his freshman tape. And if you get freshman Derek Stingley, you got a really good player. And the only real knock on him other than injury is effort. Can you get him playing at that high level? Because he can. He absolutely can. It's just whether he wants to or not. But could end up being a steal at this number 12 spot. Much like how Marshawn Lattimore dropped to a similar spot in 2017 when the Saints absolutely crushed the 2017 draft. I mean, it was just amazing. You go back and look at Marshawn Lattimore, Ryan Ramczyk, Marcus Williams, Alvin Kamara, Trey Hendrickson. I mean, I could go on and on and on. That's actually pretty much where it ends. But, I mean, incredible draft class. And it could start off similarly here for the Vikings with a falling corner in the draft. Because Marshawn Lattimore probably could have gone as high as number 2 that year to the Niners, who ended up trading back with the Bears, who moved up. But anyway, that's enough about that. Texans back on the board at 13. Went with Ekwonu earlier. No real great edge threats. We're not going to take a tackle. So we're going to take Kyle Hamilton. Yeah, I don't really think he's a free safety, but I do think he is an upgrade for them at the position of strong safety. I think he can play in the box. I think that's probably his best role, as I talked about in my Kyle Hamilton is disappointing video. Yeah, I think he's disappointing in the fact that you want to see more for what's, thought to be the best player in the draft. I don't think he can play over the top, really, and I know he can't play in the slot, but he can play in an overhang role, pushed over a little bit as more of a run defender, even if I don't like him matching up with slot receivers. Very few safeties can do that. I understand that. He's going to take away tight ends and hopefully play like that Cam Chancellor role, and he would be, I think, really good in that role. So I think people think I hate Kyle Hamilton now, even though I think he's still a round 1 guy, and I gave him a round 1 grade as like an overhang guy and like a Cam Chancellor type role, even like a weak side linebacker. But he's just a good player, even if I don't really think he's this great over the top single high free safety. Ravens at 14. I really want to go Charles Cross. I really do. Him being available at 14 is pretty good value, and the Ravens could really use tackle for the future. Now, the reason I'm not going to do that is because they signed Morgan Moses in free agency, and even though I don't really think so highly of Morgan Moses, I think it's going to be enough that they're not going to consider taking a tackle in the first round, and I think they might end up going a different direction. Now, Jordan Davis, I think, is certainly in play. Devontae Wyatt for sure, and I think maybe you'd even take a corner like Trent McDuffie at 14. I think would be a really, really good selection for the Ravens, and that's actually what I'm going to end up doing. And my reasoning for this, the Ravens cornerback group has deteriorated quite a bit recently. Tavon Young, old and not obviously in the long-term future. Jimmy Smith along the same lines. When you lose Jimmy Smith, who had been there for a while, and you lose Tavon Young, they're both free agents. I feel like sometimes in these videos, I know exactly what I mean, and I don't say it in the perfect way. Like, for example, with the Packers, I was talking about the Devontae Adams trade, and I said, well, if you keep Devontae Adams, you don't keep Robert Tonyan, and you lose Rasul Douglas. The reason I had mentioned those two guys is because they had re-signed with the Packers after the Devontae Adams trade, But in the video, I can understand how people thought that I said, well, you lose Devontae Adams, and as a result, if you keep Devontae Adams, you lose Robert Tonyan and you lose Rasul Douglas. But the whole reason I brought those two guys up is because they had re-signed. Hopefully that made sense. But for the Ravens, your cornerback group is just deteriorated over time. Marcus Peters coming back from injury is a question mark. Obviously, it's tough not to love Marlon Humphrey, but Trent McDuffie can also play a hybrid DB role, whether it's slot corner, whether it's like on the boundary, whether it's even back at safety. And you have Marcus Williams, but I think McDuffie's just too good to pass up at this spot for doing all the different things he's capable of doing for the Ravens in that secondary. He can really do everything that you'd want from a DB. It's Trent McDuffie, and then it's like Dax Hill for the corners that can do everything. Incredible players. An ad for my second channel, which is Bengal Plays, doing a Pirates franchise on there. If you like me for my video game content, check out my second channel. It's linked down in the description of every video and in my channels box on my main channel. It's Bengal Plays, and you can find MLB stuff over on that channel. So link down below. Hope you subscribe. Hope you watch the videos. At number 15 here, I think the Eagles might consider taking Jameson Williams, one of the best deep threats in the draft, and they keep trying to hit on these deep threats, and they haven't been able to. And maybe that's just Jalen Reagor. I guess JJ or Thego Whiteside is not really a deep threat. He's more of a jump ball guy, even if he does work down the field. Hasn't been very good. But Jameson Williams can actually catch. He should be back in time for the season. Rehab's going really well, and is still one of the best deep threats in the entire draft. Really good player. And at 15 here, I think it's pretty good value as we get to the Saints at 16. And this worked out really well for them. Because, yeah, they could trade up for a QB. But if Charles Cross and Trevor Penning are both still on the board, I think the Saints are in heaven. And if you're looking to replace Teron Armstead, it's going to sound like a hot take, but it's not to me, is that there's probably not a better tackle in the draft to do it than Charles Cross. You're talking about probably the best pass-protecting offensive tackle in the draft. And for a guy like Teron Armstead, who you Saints fans know would go out and play on an island when he was healthy, that's exactly what Charles Cross can do in pass pro. I think he can fill in that same role. So you're not hard-pressed to take a tackle at this spot, but the fact that Charles Cross made it to this pick, I think you'd be really, really happy with that. And then for the Chargers, I am going to go Jordan Davis. Now, I don't think they necessarily have to do this. If I were in their position, I probably would take Trevor Penning. I'm not going to lie, because I think you could take another defensive tackle if you wanted to do that in the second round. And then Penning would probably be your right tackle replacement, even if he's probably not ready right away. You know what? I am going to make that move. I wish I could change this, but I'm going to have to restart. I just talked myself into Trevor Penning. They just need a right tackle so badly. And they signed Austin Johnson in free agency, and that's not even their best signing on the interior, the defensive line. Sebastian Joseph Day, they just really didn't do anything about tackle. And Trevor Penning's here. I think it makes a lot of sense to want to start him at right tackle. Eagles at 18, I'm going to go Dax Hill. I've done this a few times for the Eagles, and I guess in my head there's pushback on this, but I don't actually think there is. Because many of you guys know that, that have seen Dax Hill. He's arguably the best safety in the draft. And it's like, oh, Kyle Hamilton. I get it. Kyle Hamilton and Dax Hill are not the same player. They're going to do different things. Hamilton's more of a box player. Dax Hill is a slot corner / deep free safety. So they're going to do very different things. Dax Hill's really, really good. So what you're getting with him is not just a safety. You're getting someone that can be a slot corner. In sub packages, can play boundary corner and can be a true over-the-top single-high free safety. He has incredible range and athleticism. Dax Hill's really, really good. And for the Eagles, who just need help in the secondary, just take a player that can do everything and figure out what role you like him in best, whether it's a slot corner, whether it's a free safety. Maybe even want to try and develop him as a boundary, although I probably wouldn't suggest that as his main role. This is just a really good pick at this spot. I think they have enough depth on the defensive line that they don't really need to take one here in the first round. Dax Hill is just really good value in my opinion at 18. I think this is his spot. As we get to the Saints at 19, they're second of 2 picks, and we have to go receiver. We have to. And it's just because there just isn't anything there. You have Michael Thomas, and this is a popular pick at the start of the year. It's going to be Chris Olave. deep threat to go along with Michael Thomas. You have Jameis Winston. He loves to throw the ball deep, and Olave is going to be able to go up and get it. Work down the field, fluid, easy mover, smooth route runner. Olave is just a fun player to watch down the field, and I think he's a good fit for the Saints that I think absolutely will take receiver with one of these first 2 picks if they stay with 2 first-rounders here in the first draft, or first round of the draft. At 20 for the Steelers. They've got a lot of options here. They really do. I don't find interior offensive line to even be a need at all anymore. I know it's apparently the top need for the Draft Network. I would vehemently disagree, as I think you're not going to pay Mason Cole all this money to not play. You're not going to pay James Daniels all this money to not play. Kendrick Green's going to go back to guard. You have Kevin Dotson, who's probably going to start as well. So you can't play all these interior offensive linemen on the field at one time. I don't know why they would draft one in the first round at this point. I really don't. Because you have 4 interior offensive linemen for 3 spots, and you've paid 2 of them pretty well. Kendrick Green doesn't have to be a starter. Was not very good at center, more of a guard, but you have Kevin Dotson. He's pretty good. Probably the best of anyone on that offensive line. You're not taking interior. And then when you pay Mason Cole and you pay James Daniels, you're going to have too many interior offensive linemen if you take another one at 20. And injuries do happen, but it's not worth the first round pick in my opinion at all. I want to go corner. I like the value of these defensive tackles slipping in the draft here, like Jordan Davis and Devontae Wyatt. I think that's an option. And I don't think there's a tackle worth taking. It's a tough spot here for the Steelers. I'd also consider receiver. I think there's an outside shot that they would consider taking one, as Chase Claypool is really their best receiver right now, which is less than ideal. That's right, they have Deontay Johnson as well. He's definitely the best receiver on that team. Maybe they don't need a third receiver. I think safety's a pretty big need as well. I think I want to go in the secondary here. I don't want Miles Killebrew starting for the Steelers. So in my opinion, this is Lewis Cine, who I think is a perfect pairing with Minkah Fitzpatrick, honestly. And I think it's one of these corners. Do you want the ball hawk in Andrew Booth? Do you want more of a lockdown man corner in Kaiir Elam if he stays healthy? For me, it's in between those 3 players. I don't know that Cine gets into the first round, but I think this is going to be somebody on defense. Could also go Jordan Davis to replace Tyson Alualu. I mean, you really have options here is the thing. I just think if you're going to take a nose tackle, you can find someone to play that role later in the draft. I hate to keep saying that because Jordan Davis is more of a nose tackle, or more than a nose tackle, because he's a freak athlete. Like one of the craziest athletes in NFL history, honestly, at that size and that weight, to move as fast and can be as explosive as he can be, as evident by his record broad jump for the position, pretty much. But I just don't think I can sell that here. I think it's got to be a DB. I am going to go with Andrew Booth Jr. Ball hawk, some of the best ball skills in the draft. I think that's really his biggest strength. That's why I keep highlighting that. And he's still got a long way to go, but he's a really exciting player. And I think warranted of a top 20 pick in the draft as we get to the Patriots at 21, who I think would be probably fairly disappointed that he's not available at this spot. And I think really would consider Jordan Davis highly, or Devin Lloyd. Those are probably the 2 players I'm in between right now. The Patriots love their length at the linebacker position, and Devin Lloyd has a lot of it. And they are really missing a Jordan Davis type player, and that could be your Vince Wilfork. And the Patriots have spent a first rounder on Vince Wilfork, who was a nose tackle. It's super important in the Bill Belichick defense. So I think that's definitely an option. Corner, they just really need that position so badly. And I think we're going to do... I'm going to take Jordan Davis. I think it's just good value at this spot. I know they need corner, but in my head, I'm wrestling around with the idea of, do you draft for need? Do you draft for best player available? And I think the Patriots would lean best player available and then do their usual thing, which is taking a DB in the second round. Look back through history. There's nobody like the Patriots who loves drafting a DB more in the second round. I can count like 10 of them off the top of my head, and most of them you probably don't think are going to go in that spot. I mean, Duke Dawson is a name that comes out. Razai Dowling is a name that comes to mind. Who's a Vanderbilt corner? Shoot. I knew it was something weird. Joe Juan Williams, he was a second-round pick. Kyle Duggar was a second-round pick. They have Jabril Peppers. He's not going to play corner for them, obviously. They need corner so badly. I'm sure they're going to figure out how to draft one in the second round and just put your future nose tackle somewhere in rotating around. And that's what you can do. I know it's like, we have Devon Gottschall. He's good. Christian Barmore is not a nose at all. But for the future and rotating these big defensive tackles in and out the way the Patriots really would love to do, I think Jordan Davis is a really good selection for them. Even if that's not the name you're probably thinking they would take at that spot. And I do think that Devin Lloyd is certainly in play. I mean, he is a perfect Sam linebacker, but they traded for Mack Wilson. They're in an interesting spot. The Patriots have options. The closest thing left to a receiver one on the board is Treylon Burks, so I won't hesitate. He's really, really good. He actually plays a lot faster than his 40 time, and he is adept at beating press man coverage. Like, these are receiver one traits. Great ball skills, great after the catch. Treylon Burks is really good, and I think really good value for the Packers here at 22. Really considered Devontae Wyatt quite a bit, but there's a chance he gets down here to 28. There's a chance, at least, that happens. For the Cardinals, Kaiir Elam's in play. I'm really considering just taking Zion Johnson and being done with it. I think that's a really good pick for them. But they ended up getting Will Hernandez. And I think the biggest glaring needs for this team are overwhelmingly corner and edge. So it's, do you like Karlaftis or Mafe at 23, which maybe you do, or do you want to take Kaiir Elam? And for me here, I think we're going to bet on the upside of Boye Mafe. He's a tremendous athlete, and if you can develop him, you could get a real stud here at 23. But this is where you take the shots on athletic first players, and Boye Mafe had a great Senior Bowl too, so he did well in the one-on-ones. But this is where you take a shot on the athlete first guys. Back into the first round, he's still developing as a pass rusher, but sky's the limit for him, and I do think it makes sense at 23. Cowboys at 24. Kenyon Green. Do I just take that? I think I will. It's just such an easy pick to make when he is a plug-and-play left guard. And the Cowboys, I think their biggest need is probably on the offensive line right now. It's tough because you could say edge is a big need, safety is a big need, right tackle. We want to do better than Terrence Steele. I don't really see the value in taking a tackle at this spot when you could maybe get one of the best guards in Kenyon Green at 24. I just think the value is really, really good. Like, you have Tyler Biadasz at center. You have Connor McGovern, who could probably play left guard at a decently high level. I sometimes get confused with Connor McGoverns. There are two of them. I forget which one's better, but I think the Cowboys have a decent one. Two Connor McGoverns that play guard in the league. It's too much for me. But Kenyon Green just feels like a safe pick. But the Cowboys could really go a lot of different directions with that pick, in my opinion. For the Bills, I'm just going to take Kaiir Elam. They need corner really badly. It just makes a lot of sense if he's here. For the Titans, I'm going to take a receiver. And I think Jahan Dotson makes a lot of sense as a true deep threat. For the Titans, they just really don't have that. Although, I'm tempted to take Tyler Smith. If there's anyone that... I'm going to do it. If there's anyone that fits the Titans' style of offense on the offensive line, it's Tyler Smith. He can play tackle, played left tackle at Tulsa, even if he projects maybe as more of a guard. I think he can plug and play at right tackle. It's a big need, and he is a mean offensive lineman, a mauler, and that's exactly what they like at this spot. And I know you're like, oh, this is Isaiah Wilson all over again. It isn't. It really isn't. Like, Isaiah Wilson was a mauler. The reason he didn't work out was all mental. If Tyler Smith checks out upstairs, this is a really good pick, and I think this is the player you were trying to take when you took Isaiah Wilson at the back end of the first round a few years ago. Bucks at 27. Zion Johnson. Started left guard. They lost Alex Kappa at right guard. Ali Marpet retired at left guard. Zion Johnson, plug-and-play starter at the position. It is so tough to do better than that at that spot. And then George Karlaftis at 28. Although I don't love edge for them. I really want to take Devontae Wyatt. I just think he's great value at this spot here. I don't think he really lasts until 28. And he's so good. And This is a guy you can rotate in. He can be a 3 tech for you. I think he plays next to Kenny Clark, and he is the interior disruptor. Kenny Clark's a really great defensive tackle, but he's a nose. Devontae Wyatt isn't a nose tackle. He's a great athlete. I think that's really being overshadowed from what Jordan Davis was able to do at the Combine, but Devontae Wyatt's a stud. And I think if you're the Packers and you come away in the draft with Devontae Wyatt and Treylon Burks, you gotta be stoked about that, because you had arguably two of the best players at their position in the draft at 22 and 28, and that's really tough to beat. For the Chiefs, I think it's easy. Jahan Dotson is essentially your Tyreek Hill replacement. They can do the same role. Now, is Jahan Dotson going to be quite as explosive or dynamic as Tyreek Hill? No, nobody is. We all know that, right? Tyreek Hill is a huge loss for this team. But if you're trying to replace him, Jahan Dotson's probably the best one in the whole draft to do that with in terms of a skill set profile. Really, really good. And I'm actually going to double dip on receivers here and go with George Pickens. Now, I think Christian Watson, Sky Moore in play, but George Pickens also projects as a potential wide receiver 1. Apparently, the Chiefs have really been doing their homework on him. There's some immaturity issues with him, some off-the-field stuff that was apparently covered up, but I can't speak too much on it because a lot of it is speculation. But the immaturity thing is apparently a big issue, and then coming off injury, you have some question marks. But if there's anyone in this draft that I would bet on with having one of the highest potentials, it probably is George Pickens. He is your Derek Stingley of receivers in this draft. And I think at 30, this is really good value. Now, is he going to be available in the second round? There's a good chance, because teams drafting in the first round really do value the character. And that's why you hear a guy like Kayvon Thibodeau dropping, because guys just don't know. Same thing with Derek Stingley. But with George Pickens, where would you take a shot at a player like this? Your second pick in the back end of the first round. Do they double dip on receiver in the draft? Probably not, but I'd like them to. They need receiver badly. Let me show you their depth chart. You have Juju Smith-Schuster, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and Mecole Hardman. Hardman might not be here long term. Marquez is a deep threat. Juju is the dirty work guy that is good in the slot. Maybe they don't double dip on receiver. I'm going to actually adjust this now. I forgot about the Marquez Valdes-Scantling signing. I'm going to change this. I will, of course, keep Jahan Dotson the same, but the second pick, I'm going to make Arnold Ebiketie now. He's like, above George Karlaftis. Ebiketie just projects as a better pass rusher right away than Karlaftis. Karlaftis is a good player. Could end up being a first-round pick, for sure. I think the biggest issue with him that teams will point to is agility and short arms. That's kind of what it comes down to. Just the number of edge rushers you can talk about in the league that have short arms and also are not bendy, it's not really a lot. So Karlaftis is a big question mark in the draft for me, even if I do think he can end up being a really good player. And then for the Bengals, Bernard Ryman, still think it could be, for sure. Also, Linderbaum's here at 31. Yeah, they got Lyle Collins. We're going to go Tyler Linderbaum. I do think there's a good chance he's available at this spot, even if he could go earlier. We just see centers drop all the time. Creed Humphrey made it to nearly the third round. Tyler Linderbaum's really good. I think certain teams are going to move him off the board or certainly down just based on him being undersized as well. You got to remember, these teams covet length and size and speed, and Linderbaum doesn't really have the length or the size that a lot of teams look for. So some teams will deem him untouchable and they just won't draft him. It's just something that happens. And I think at 31, yeah, Ted Karras is a band-aid. You could draft a center. Then we get to the Lions at 32. And man, for all of these teams, every single mock draft, I just don't have them taking linebacker. And I really think Jacoby Dean is a first-round player. I think Devin Lloyd is a first-round player. I think Quay Walker could go in the first round. But I don't have them taking linebacker. Why is that? Well, I just don't see a spot for these teams taking a linebacker over other more pressing needs when you can find LB later in the draft. And it's like, why take a Devin Lloyd at 15 when you can get Chad Muma at 50? And I know that's not a pound-for-pound great comparison, but why take Devin Lloyd at 15 when you can take Leo Chenal at 50? So I just think the linebacker depth in this draft is really, really good. And I don't really think you have to press yourself into taking a linebacker. But that being said, the Lions here at the back end of the first round, Went with Trayvon Walker at 2. Where do you want to go here? You have options. Could take a quarterback. Could say, hey, Desmond Ridder, this is good value for you at 32. We're going to take you. Could absolutely happen. We see quarterbacks go in this range all the time. All the time. Now, could they take a receiver? Christian Watson, develop him. George Pickens, develop him. Absolutely could happen. Linebacker in play. As for safeties, I don't really see them doing that at 32. But Jalen Petrie, I love. Lewis Cine, I think he could be a first rounder. Jaquan Brisker is really good as well. The Lions here, as funny as it is to say, the world is their oyster. And they could really do a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, what you have to remember is not everybody can go in the first round. Not everybody can. So it's like, oh, how is George Karlaftis or Devin Lloyd or Nakobe Dean slipping out of the first round? Not everybody can go in the first round. So it's just kind of one of those things. And I'm going to go with Devin Lloyd. And I think this is a pretty realistic draft at this point in early April. We'll get a better idea, a couple days before the draft, how this thing's probably going to go. But I think this is probably one of the better mocks I've done. I feel very confident at this point, as confident as I can be, about these picks. I think there's a real good chance. All of these seem to make a lot of sense for me. And you'll have to let me know what you think down in the comment section below. But that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.
See me high step to the end zone. My life like a game, Nintendo. Playing with the best, let them know. Get off the track, the train's coming through. Yeah. Promise you get in my way, then you best believe I'ma just run over you. Yeah. I'ma turn taking it back to the house. Defensive joke, I'm laughing so loud.